Hi, today I'd like to introduce you to the new Lightroom CC. Lightroom CC represents a fairly large shift in the way that we are going to think about post-processing going forward. Previously, you were able to license from Adobe the photographer's bundle, which included Lightroom and Photoshop for $10 a month. That hasn't changed. What has changed is that Lightroom is now built around what they were kind of going towards with their Lightroom Mobile. And we still have access to Lightroom in the way we knew it. However, this is now Lightroom Classic. So that's a pretty big shift. The key here is that in addition to having all of your images, stored locally, you can obviously still do that. Now they have it so that you automatically sync to the cloud. They've given you 1 terabyte of storage, which is ample for most people. However, the more photos you have, the more you're going to have to be selective about what you upload. One of the things that is very nice about this is very intuitive. We have all of the same basic editing features that we have here in Lightroom. And before I go any further, I should mention that they have updated the process. We now have current is version 4. It used to be version 3. There are a few little tweaks, but they're pretty minor, and I think that the biggest thing you're going to notice is perhaps that the noise reduction engine is a little bit enhanced. There are a few little tweaks here and there, but otherwise I don't think you're going to really notice a big difference. You will notice for sure is a big layout change. So once you've uploaded your images, and you can do that in a number of ways. You can certainly do it. You can right here is add photos. This is the screen you're going to get. And like the develop module in Lightroom Classic, all of these sliders represent edits you can make. They've changed the orders a little bit. So where we used to have, for example, here in the basic one, clarity was with vibrance and saturation, and dehaze was down here as an effect. Now in Lightroom, they have put the clarity, dehaze, and vignette all together, and that just makes sense because this is really more of an effect. Clarity and dehaze are very closely related to each other in the way they work, and so it makes sense that they would be together. Where you used to have across the top your different panels, here now we can crop, rotate, healing brush or cloning tool, the brush tool, your linear gradient, and the radial gradient. These are all going to work essentially the same way that they did in Lightroom Classic. Just like in the Classic, you can use auto features and you can let it kind of auto tone. You can have it apply a number of different features. I think this is inappropriate for this one. It makes them a little bit too bright. So you can undo just as you always did, and that was just a Control or Command Z depending on your platform. Sliders move very easily. You can see how that works. And you can tweak as you needed. So for this, I'd say probably bring the shadows up a little bit, not where it was previously. Maybe the dehaze just a little bit. We can still use the radial gradient, and we can still have things like iris enhance was one that I would always like, which would be a little bit of an exposure, a little bit of clarity, no dehaze, a little bit of saturation. And you can still apply that just as you always have. Now what you see here is that it was just the opposite of what I wanted. Everything brightened up except for where I wanted it. So the key here is really make sure that you click on that invert button so you are applying it in the middle, or applying your setting in the middle rather than outside of it. And of course if you right click, you can still duplicate and drag the duplication over. From here, for this one, just to kind of give you an idea how I would approach this, click on my crop and rotate tool. I probably see this as a 8x10 kind of image, and you can see we can either move the sliders here, or once you're just outside you get the rocker and you can kind of shift this up. And I actually like the little bit of the lean here, so I'll probably keep it right there and maybe move him in the frame a little bit. And then you can just select another tool. You can go back to the main panel and you can see how that looks. The edit would be exactly the same here. Instead, start with the crop. Add in the iris enhance And for this, I've already inverted it, so it will remember the settings no matter which version you're using. And you can see we get the same, pretty much the same look from either application, and that's appropriate. Now I have this image here set to sync, and this is kind of an important concept. So because I'm working on this in two different versions, it's likely to confuse it. You wouldn't want to edit the same image on both platforms at the same time. Once you decide that you want to take something from Lightroom Classic and put it into the synced version online, it's just a matter of clicking the icon and dragging up to sync photos. And I've already done this, so I won't actually make any changes here by doing that, but you can see that that would be the way you do it. It would show uploading up here. Once we do that, it would take a moment to upload and then back download, and you would see that in your film strip down here. So assuming that you're fairly familiar with the settings from the Lightroom Classic, now we're calling that, I won't really go into any detail today. I just wanted to give you the overview. Finally, before we go, I wanted to show you we have different views. So we've got the detail view. We can do grid, which is somewhat similar to the grid view that you could get in Lightroom Classic. And we have this new tile view, which really kind of packs them in there depending on your orientation. So we get the same height across, so that means that your landscape views are going to be relatively large compared to your portrait views. Of course, you can tweak that with the slider down here to make that work well for you, but this is actually a really nice way to kind of look through all of your images, and you can rate them very easily this way. Finally, before I finish up, a big advantage of this new Lightroom Classic CC is that 1 terabyte of storage. It automatically, by default, will upload these images to the Adobe cloud. Having these on the cloud means that you can edit these anywhere you want. You can start off on your desktop, you can move to a laptop, you can actually even access and edit these images on your iPad or your Android tablet. And the edits that you apply in any of those platforms will be centrally applied to your image on the cloud, so that when you get back to your desktop, all of those settings are brought back in. As a professional photographer, I actually like this quite a bit. One of the things that I do with my clients is show them proofs of the images after a session. And as we go through these images, I will have my pre-edits, of course. I don't show them raw files. However, if we wanted to tweak, let's say, the crop for a particular print, I can show them what that looks like automatically on my tablet, and by the time that I get home, that will already have updated to my central database, and so I won't have to go back and kind of refer to notes as to what we discussed, because it'll already be built into the file. It's definitely an exciting new way to apply post-processing. I think that this is only going to get better. As of this point, I think 1 terabyte is sufficient for most, but that means that we're not going to be able to upload every single image. So it makes sense to do a pre-screening to kind of weed out the ones that you know you're not going to use. And so you're only putting your best images up into the Adobe Cloud. 1 terabyte seems like a lot of data, but it actually adds up pretty quick, especially if you're going to start adding video files to the mix. Overall, very exciting new change. I think you're going to like it. Let me know if you have any questions.